Today is October 3rd, 2024, and the Hurricane Helene has just come through and wrecked and devastated from Florida to Ohio. Many people are suffering. Many people have lost all that they've have. And so being sensitive to that, I'm going to share surviving your homestead in tough times. I'm going to talk a little bit about addressing natural disaster, economic distress, civil unrest, and sometimes even your own ignorance. Now, again, in the case of this hurricane, your own ignorance is not, they're not placing any blame on anything. But sometimes in our design, we fail to address certain aspects that are going to reduce our threat footprint and ultimately end up causing frustration and problems. Now, again, we're going to talk about designing for resilience. And we're not talking about the specific situation here. I just happen to have this content in the queue, and it's relevant right now. My goal with this presentation is to help you rebuild quickly and get back on your feet, as well as build in such a way that's going to protect your home, your family, and your community. And so I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. The number one thing that you need in this situation is fresh food, fresh water, and safe shelter. And so when we're designing our homestead, that's really what we're looking for. So the permaculture design is going to focus on water access shelter or water access in buildings. And if you have clean water, you'll survive much longer than any other condition because in such a short period of time, you could become dehydrated, you could become sick. Dysentery is a real thing. And so when we're reducing our threat footprint, we're amplifying those necessary and valuable things to get us going in the event of a natural disaster, civil unrest. Now, we're not talking about necessarily bug out bags or 72-hour bags, but I will tell you that as we're moving to the homestead here and I'm actively downsizing, I am testing my 72-hour bag. Now, what's a 72-hour bag? Well, FEMA and the different organizations recommend that you have at least 72 hours of clothing, food, and then some mechanism to purify water. And so in my 72-hour bag, I have a couple changes of clothes. I have water. I have the different things that I need. Now, I establish those things in the homestead because I'm going to a safe environment that I control. That's not always the case. If you've got a disaster barreling in and you grab your, a jerry can full of water, you grab a jerry can full of gasoline for your vehicle, you grab everybody's 72-hour bags, and you're going to have food in these bags sometimes. It could just be tuna fish, but it's something to tide you over in this emergency. And you have that already. You still may not be able to put it in the vehicle because of rains or hurricanes or storms. You may have to shelter in place. The big thing is we're reducing our threat footprint by narrowing down the scope of what we're going to have in our immediate vicinity, and that those things are going to be tied to your long-term success. Now, if you're just starting a homestead or a small farm, this 72-hour bag might allow you to camp. I'm actually sitting in the travel trailer right now, recording this message for you, and I'm recording it on my phone, just, sitting here. There's no devices, there's no microphone, there's nothing, just my phone. And that's the minimum viable to create a podcast. And I have that ready, and I have my bag over here. It's not a 72-hour bag. If I had to be here for 3 days, I'm going to hop in the truck and drive down the road and get something to eat. But there are things on the property here like chickens and goats and different types of forage that are available for me to have a few days worth of meals if I had to. Now, let's look at the other side of that. We're looking at the minimal amount of things to be comfortable to survive a disaster or a situation. But what about in the homestead design? Now, I've had people call up and we're doing a design plan and they're talking about their 7,200 square foot house with the beautiful wraparound porch and their view of the mountains. And they're going to have this barn and they're going to have the llamas and goats and sheep and they just go on and on about all this stuff they're going to have. And I'm really now, doing this for a little while and now having 3,200 square foot house or having the ability to travel around the world, I'm more looking at the intentional thrift. do I really need a 3,200 square foot house, yet alone what a lot of people are looking for, these 7,200 square foot mansions and stuff? Do I really need that? Is that really going to serve my needs? Because really, when you're doing a farm or you're doing a homestead, there's a lot of stuff that's outside your property. Even if you've just got 5 acres, you've got fencing, garden materials, seeds, you've got fuel for vehicles. If you, God forbid, get a tractor, you've got fuel and repair for the tractor. You've got a lot of other elements that are going to require resources. So if you're going to build a 7,200 square foot house or a 2,500 square foot house or even 1,000 square foot house, that is a tremendous outlay. That's why a lot of farms and homesteads cost $1 million or more to get started. And trust me, I've done the numbers for a number of different people. If you bought a piece of land and you've been sitting on that piece of land for years and you're beating yourself up because you weren't able to build that dream house that you wanted. You weren't able to get the animals that you were looking for. You weren't able to get a lot of the things done that you wanted to get done. Listen, it's harder than it looks. I know the YouTube videos make homesteading look like it's easy. It's very idyllic. But they got to do that to entertain you so that they can get the views, to get the sponsors, to get the money. If you're going to set up a homestead, I'm looking at more of a subsistence farming. Because if you can't grow enough food to care for your family or to supplement the food that you have, to start getting higher quality, higher value food, then you don't have food security. And see, when we go back to the basics, water, food, shelter, if you don't have clean water, if you don't have food, then why bother with a shelter? Because we can really survive with much less than you might imagine. Now, I have a travel trailer. It doesn't mean you got to get a travel trailer. I've slept in tents before. I'm a little bit older now, so I prefer sleeping on a mattress or a futon. But ultimately, I also can just go sleep in the woods under a tree, presuming the weather situation's right. And lately, I've been talking that we actually require an introductory course to survival before you come to this property, because we only offer primitive camping. Now, we don't offer this to the public. It's for private clients and members and people that are on the newsletter and stuff like that. But my point being that if you can't stay on your land in the basics of conditions, then maybe that land doesn't have enough value to you to stay on in the long term. And so when we're designing, even rebuilding, what's the minimum viable value? Now, I had a note in here, minimum viable design. Now, I had a note in here that said, reduce your threat footprint, run lean, don't fly what you cannot replace. Now, that's a little insensitive for what's going on today, but that comes from EVE Online, which is an online game where you can, at any time you can have your ship taken from you. You can be attacked by people. It can be destroyed. But it does still apply in life. As you're thinking about rebuilding, really, what do you want most from what you had? Not necessarily rebuilding what you've got, because what was the most important thing? And that leads to the next thing is building of community. I'm seeing more and more with the political unrest, with the civil unrest, with the economic disasters, with the failures in decision making that the government is making and that people are making, that a natural disaster is just a part of the puzzle. And if we have good neighbors, or we're a good neighbor, then we're going to go much further. And I'm really advocating you being a good neighbor and beyond your neighbors, building relationships and networking. Now, this could be a fraternal organization that you work with. It could be with your local Ruritan club. It could be with your local rescue squad or fire department. But right now, more than ever, I know technology is focusing us on what's going on in Russia, or what's going on in the Ukraine, or what's going on in Israel, or what's going on in Gaza. And it's kind of focusing all of our attention there like that's the only thing happening. But there's stuff going on in China and Taiwan. There's stuff going on in Africa. There's stuff going on in South America. And it's like, if you're focused always out there, my observation is that internal suffers. One, you get frustrated. You're always looking out and worried about the next big thing. And that's actually, and we talk about this in another newsletter I have, that's actually a psychological control, because if you can keep a population scared, then it's easy to suggest what they ought to do. Here's something different, though. If you turn off the TV, you turn off the news, and you go outside and check on your neighbor. So it's highly likely you've got elderly neighbors. When was the last time you went over just to see how they're doing? To check on something they need? A neighbor of mine, she was checking on me. He came by and he said, Justin, I haven't seen you in a while. Because, of course, we've been busy getting the homestead up and going and preparing land and caring for animals and doing those things. And neighbor came over and said, I hadn't seen you in a while. How you been doing? And then we got to talking. And he said, oh, by the way, I'm moving along on a project. I've got basically had a garden area. And I ended up with like 12 T-posts. Now, T-posts are $7 a piece here. And so anytime somebody wants to give me some T-posts, even if I got to pull them out of the ground, I'm all for it. But again, the neighbor didn't come over to get me to help him pull out T-posts. We were having a conversation, and the conversation led to going over and pulling T-posts. Because again, we're working together as a community. Now, beyond your community, networking provides opportunities for you to find employment, for you to find new income opportunities, for you to find land that might be available. And one of the things about running lean is that if you find a piece of land and you start your homestead lean on that piece of land, and then a better piece of land comes along, you can actually move to the next piece of property. And that's one of the things that I help clients with a lot, is how do we increase the value of the land? And we do that, again, through water, access, buildings. But we do it in such a way that we're not tied to the land. Now, I know a lot of you folks want to plant down in the homestead and retire and sit on your porch and drink iced tea, but this world today may not allow that. And then the natural cycles of things, I do believe Helene was a 100-year storm. I don't think that's going to happen again anytime soon. But again, if it's what's happened here in Martinsville, thunderstorms, flash flooding, tornadoes. See, the hurricane might not happen again, but you could end up with a tornado, a forest fire, all this other stuff. Now, by the way, I have something I'm going to offer you at the end of this. It's no charge, especially if you're in the areas that have been impacted, because I want to give back. There's been enough rain and floods and things going on here in Martinsville, Henry County, that I can't go drive out someplace to help with the restoration efforts. So I'm going to use technology. I'm going to use my resources to basically help you over the phone. And we'll talk about that here shortly. The next thing we want to talk about is we want to manage our pantries. Now, a friend of mine here, the power went out. And it was out for 24 hours at the point in which we interacted. We were parking cars at the NASCAR racetrack down here, doing some community service type stuff. And he was telling me that his power had been out 24 hours. And he ended up losing $700 worth of food from his freezer, and he had a deep freezer and his refrigerator. And it wasn't devastating. You know, he can replace the food. His family's doing okay. Everybody's doing well. But how often can you afford to have that happen? How frustrating would it be if this goes on more than once? And so when we're running lean, maybe we're going to put more effort into maybe off-grid power or solar power. Maybe we're not going to be a purist when it comes to off-grid, and we're going to get grid power and a backup generator. See, there's a lot of designs. We're actually looking at building a container, standalone container with power that you can connect to grid. Or you can just pop it up in the middle of the woods somewhere, and you can fire that baby up and run a small cabin. If you guys are aware, we have the off-grid cabin program that we're putting together. And so we're going to actually have off-grid power for the cabins. And that whole design we're going to make available to you guys because, again, do you want a 7,200 square foot house that you've got to clean, you've got to furnish, that you've got to deal with a lot of things? Or do you want that hunting cabin that you're going out seasonally while you're getting that land prepared for an eventual retirement? See, this is what we're thinking about when we're doing a design plan. Another factor is we're managing that pantry. We want to have dried goods, canned goods, and a few months worth of staples. So we talked about that 72-hour bag that's going to have our comfort items. I'm looking at right now, I've got my so I can brush my teeth, and so I can comb my hair, and so that I can take a shower. I don't really shower here at the property. I'll do a wash up in a basin somewhere. And then I've got bedding, and I've got clothing. I even have my pajamas, so I can sleep in my pajamas and be comfortable. I've got water and some food, snacky type stuff to eat, a cup, that kind of thing. This morning, in the morning when I wake up, I'm going to have a cup of tea. And I've got all of that prepared and ready to go. But if you had a natural disaster and you have to evacuate, could you grab a tote out of your pantry cabinet, or to fill a tote up with a lot of dried goods so that you could take food along with you? See, this isn't just about being a blessing to your family and being prepared. It's about being able to be neighborly and have enough for others as well. This is the abundance that I talk about. Now, a lot of permaculture folks want to live, sackcloth and ashes. They want to wander the woods in a loincloth, spreading seeds like Johnny Appleseed. But that's not practical for the long term. It certainly makes a great weekend fun getaway, but it's not practical for the long term. So we're managing that pantry for day to day, but we're also making sure that pantry has things that we can grab and go if that's necessary. We're also making sure, rather than having bulk, we're not just going to Costco and buying a volume of things. We're cultivating that pantry for good health. Now, I was looking at today about dried aged duck. So I'm thinking about getting some ducks for the homestead here. I want to make sure that we're on the property more often to have the ducks, because ducks need to get locked up at night. But I'm thinking if I'm going to have ducks, I'm going to have to feed these ducks. And if I'm going to feed these ducks, we want a surplus of ducks, and those ducks are going to be eaten. I already know how to process chickens. Ducks process similar. Only difference is their stomach's a little bit lower, so you don't quite go in from the bottom. But ultimately, the duck roasts tasty. And so you don't have to have all your food in the pantry. Now, if there's a civil unrest, if there's an economic disaster, if there's a natural disaster, those could cause problems to come to you. So there is a factor of physical safety for your animals. When you do have, in the case of goats and chickens and things like that, you can have foxes and coyotes. So there's a physical need. I was out here tonight, about 8 o'clock. It's dark out, and I'm feeding the goats. And I noticed that after the goats ate, they're looking at the wood line. They're out there scoping the wood line. And so I shined a light around. I didn't see anything. But when I had left the enclosure to go back and lock up the buckets and everything so that I had everything, all the feed in the storage area, I heard something take off running through the woods. So there could have been a coyote out there, a fox out there. There could have been a bear out there. We want to be mindful of our physical security. So that pantry in a homesteading situation is going to extend past the house itself. You could have a cold cellar. You could have a freezer somewhere. We want to manage those things. We also want to plan for if we are going to lose power to keep that thing active. And so you can see there's all these other expenses. So a lot of folks going out there and building their dream house, 5,000 square feet, 3-car garage. Maybe you can afford that now, but can you afford it when the economy changes? Because that's the last point I want to leave you with. You want to do more with less, even if you can afford more. And this is important. Most 6-figure earners are one paycheck away from a devastating credit score, some of them ending up homeless or getting behind on your bills. And this is because, again, inflation is growing much faster than we're being told. And your expenses are getting higher and higher. And the money that you're earning goes less. It doesn't go as far as before. Another factor is that wages over time are stagnating. That's why a lot of times we talk about making money from your land so that you can supplement your income. Or we talk about making money in ways that are more entrepreneurial than just showing up at a job. A lot of you folks move out in the middle of the woods, and now you've doubled your commute, and the cost of fuel goes up, and now you're actually making less money and got more chores. So again, we want to look at that. Now remember, I've adjusted some of this content for Hurricane Helena that went from Florida to Ohio, and the cleanup efforts are going on right now. But I want to share with you something, kind of a takeaway. Here's what we're doing. If you've been impacted by this hurricane, flooding, tornado, any type of natural disaster, I'm not even going to ask the details of it, because part of this you're going to be sending me some pictures. What I'm offering for free, no obligation, I do ask that you join the free newsletter at www.prosperityhomestead.org/newsletter. That way we can share information and answers to people's questions. But what I want to provide to you is, now I can't come out to your location, but if you take a picture, if you email that to me, and you have a question associated with that picture, I'm going to offer free support and coaching to restore your property, to make it more climate resilient, to basically restore what needs to be restored back to where you need to do it. And I'm going to provide that to you for 6 months after you're back into your home. So if you're not in your home right now and you've got erosion issues, if you're not in your home right now and you've got cleanup and dry and roadway and all that excavation type of work. Now, in some cases, I can help find you vendors. So maybe you don't have internet, but you take your phone and you take a picture of something and you say, Justin, I'm going to need to replace my road. Here's my address. And you can, by the way, you can go to the website and you can text that to the phone number that's on the website. It doesn't come to me directly, but I'll get it in an email. Include an address or a relative address. I will sit down and get on Google Earth and some of the LiDAR systems and updated weather maps and updated satellite maps. There's a lot of storm mapping coming through. And I'm going to look at your situation and I'm going to give you a quick little write-up about what can be done. I can do a Google search. I can see if I can find some vendors nearby. Now, a lot of times in a disaster situation, if I call the vendors up, they're going to be overwhelmed. But what I'm looking to do, and at least from if you don't want to give me your address, that's fine. Take a couple pictures and give me the nearest city. The nearest city. I'm going to put together some small guides, and that way you can start making some phone calls to people, and you don't have to go chase down internet connection or diddle around on your phone and anything like that. Now, I am about 2 hours from a lot of these areas. Mount Airy and Asheville is about 3 hours away. Within 45 minutes, there were tornadoes and floods. Again, I'm not going to drive out to your location, but you're more than welcome to send photographs to the email address. So if you go to the website, www.prosperityhomestead.org, go to the contact page, say you want support for disaster recovery, so disaster recovery support, I will email you back. Me personally will email you back with it, and then you can just email a bunch of photographs. You can email the nearest city or town, and then what I'm going to do again is I'm going to answer all your questions. Now, you might be asking, how do I make any money with you doing this? Again, this is being neighborly. This is being neighborly. This storm that happened in western North Carolina, in southeastern Virginia or southwestern Virginia, is literally my backyard. But I don't care if you're in Florida or Ohio or any other temperate climate. I will answer every question you have. So send me an email. If you just want to share some ideas or concerns or frustrations you have, send it in. I'm going to take a lot of time to do this because, again, I'm investing in my neighbors. I'm investing in people that are interested in permaculture design, interested in regenerative agriculture, interested in living more holistically and having better living through homesteading. Not only that, I'm going to arrange some coaches and I'm going to arrange some experts, and we're going to do some group calls. Now, I'm going to try to make these calls so that you can attend them like from a cell phone. You don't necessarily have to go online or anything like that. They might be Zoom meetings, but we're going to go through the questions that come in, and I'm going to reach into my network of people. Now, many of them in this area are rebuilding their own properties, and so we're going to share stories about some of the rebuilds. We're going to share stories about mitigation. I'm really big on the mitigation part. You want to make sure that water gets out of your foundation. You don't want to have water in your foundation. And then, of course, if you're going to rebuild your house, there's factors you want to consider there. Our priority is going to be clean water, clean food, and safe shelter. And so I even have some resources lined up that can talk about survival shelters or temporary housing issues. Now, am I going to be able to get you temporary housing? Am I going to be able to get you a grant and all that kind of stuff? No. But I will gather information. Again, I'm going to produce PDF guides. Hopefully you can look at them on your phone. You can look at them on a laptop and then be able to make some phone calls to the areas and people who are going to be able to help you. Again, this is going to be available for up to 6 months after you're in your home. So I don't care if you're in a shelter. I don't care where you're at. You can start today. And then once you're in your home, we can then start talking about that recovery. So this is very important. Now we're going to keep it lean. We're going to keep it focused on health, wealth, and wisdom. We're going to keep it focused on that lifestyle, and we're going to get that zone 1 taken care of. Get that herb garden taken care of. Now I'm going to dig into my library of videos and the library of other people's videos and questions and answers, and we'll develop a course around that. And we're going to get you real-time answers as you ask the questions, and it's all by email. And then we'll invite you again to group coaching calls and other areas to get these insights. But we're going to look at the application of permaculture design in order to build a more resilient and manageable homestead or a small farm. And then within that concept that we teach here about getting at break even or better. Now, not everybody's going to like my advice, but I want you to. You've already been hit for devastating costs and insurances. Your premiums are going to go up, and there's a bunch of hassles going on with getting the help that you need. And so we're going to look at that. We're going to design for resilience in an ever-changing and sometimes dangerous world. And so we understand that by the time the first couple of months of you getting back on your feet and getting into your home, and you will get back into a home, may not be the one you started with, but it will be a home. Safe shelter, and then we're going to get that vision together. We're going to get those design plans together. We're going to get you into some realistic homestead situation. One of the things that we're going to look at too is community gardens. Community gardens are very powerful to start building those networks and to build up those neighborhoods and communities. And again, I am giving you my dedication to this for 6 months after you get into your home. So we can start today. Snap some pictures of your property. Ask the questions that we want. And what we're doing here is we're forward thinking beyond the disaster. This is going to help you give hope to your neighbors. If, for example, you're in a church organization and the church has had big problems, let's get a community garden going in that church so come spring people can get fresh vegetables. You may have a little bit of time here in the fall to get things growing. We want to have sanitation taken care of. We talked about this in other videos. Sanitation is critical. In a high water flood situation, septic tanks don't function right. And so we need to start talking about dry toilets. We need to start talking about temporary toilets. FEMA is not necessarily going to be there in a timely manner. What do you do in the short term? Now, again, you can start right now by visiting www.prosperityhomestead.org. Go to the contact page and ask for disaster recovery support. Either give me an address so I can look you up on the satellites and see what the updated satellites look like as far as flood areas, because you want to know, for example, if there's high elevations above you and you're in a watershed, you're going to design a little bit differently than if you are in a where you're on the high slope. Also, we want to look at some of the ideas that you have for recovery. You may, for example, be able to get your garage cleared out and start basic camp there. The off-grid cabins that we're talking about here has a lot of concepts for living comfortably with limited resources. And again, most people are one paycheck away from a disaster. If you're currently facing a disaster from the hurricane, from tornadoes that kicked off around it, from lightning strikes that were around there, from the flooding, we want to help you. Now, when I say we, again, I'm going to try to match your question with an appropriate expert. And then if you send me a picture and you say, look, I need excavation services to clear mud out of my driveway. I'm going to need a home inspector to look over my home to see what needs to be done. I'm going to need to know your closest town in order to get you that contact information and to get you those details. And then if possible, we're going to get a message out to those people after we've connected with you. And then ultimately try to get you coordinate the resources. That's what I can offer. I can offer coordination. I can offer insights and resources. I can offer guides and tools. But again, we're dealing with some problems here in Martinsville, Henry County, Dry Forks. Some of those areas had flooding and stuff. And so ultimately, the best I can do is coordination, information, resources, and guides. Now, folks, hang in there. This will all be behind us before you know it. Now, we have to be careful not to get the recovery and then forget that hurricanes can come. They seem to come every August. And we haven't had a big disaster like this with multiple hurricanes right after another, since 1960s. So again, that's why I think this is one of those 100-year storms. But we're still going to have floods, rains, tornadoes, civil unrest, economic distress. And again, the ignorance part I'm talking about is not asking for help, not reaching out in the community. A lot of folks want to prep. They want to go out there and have their off-grid homestead. They want to drop out of society. What I'm saying is you're going to transform society to serve your family, to serve your neighbors, to serve yourself much better. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. I know this has been a long podcast episode, but again, if you visit www.prosperityhomestead.org, go to the contact page and ask for disaster recovery support. If you're listening to this podcast, in the comments, if you type disaster recovery support, I'll get you a link and I'll get you information so that we can get you started. We're going to hopefully do a bunch of group calls. We're going to now, again, if you send your picture of things, we're going to respect your privacy, but any of those pictures could be used in building out these guides, because what we want you to do is get good information and then take it to your neighbors. And then now you and your neighbors are recovered, and that'll cut down on looting. That'll start helping getting infrastructure in place. And we can communicate. You might be stuck at your place, but if you're listening to this podcast, then everything I have to share, all the resources I can dig into, all the searching and getting those names and addresses together so that you can get the help that you need is available. See, there's hope. There's hope. When you're surviving your homestead, designing for resilience, and building up a community, there will always be hope. Again, contact me by any means that you like. Mention disaster recovery support. Ask your questions. Tell me what you need right now. And if you tell me the nearest town or city, or give me the address of the location in which is impacted, I will respect your privacy and not share that information, but I will go onto Google Maps. I will go to local resources centers. I will go on the internet, and I will get these resources put together and send you a PDF file. That PDF file will not have any private information in it. It'll have lists of resources, guides, links, that kind of stuff, and you're welcome to it's designed for you to share with your neighbors. Then that way people can be making phone calls, they can get back online, they can get back on track. Folks, this is about getting you back on your feet. Now, again, when you're back in your house, when you're back on your homestead, when you're at that next level, when it comes to your family being able to be comfortable, then I will continue to support you for up to 6 months. Because again, homesteading doesn't stop when you build the house. Homesteading doesn't stop when you do the garden. There's a cycle of seasons that you're going to go through so that you can get resilient. Design with resilience. Erosion management, flood management, fire mitigation, all that stuff goes into your permaculture design. Thank you for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and I hope to hear of your successes soon. Thanks for watching, or you're not watching, you're listening. Anyway.